Good evening, Namaskar viewers. Welcome to Heartland Bengali. Today we have a very interesting guest with us. Um, uh, a few of us know his name. Most of us don't know his name. Let us just call him Infinity. He likes to call himself as Infinity. So I'll address him as Infi. He is a young boy, all of 22. He is still a student, an extremely sharp boy. He is sharp as a tack. If I were if I were as sharp as him when I was 22, people would probably be scared of me by now at my age. Okay, so uh, 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 there is a reason why he is hiding behind an icon. We call it a mask, and I would be handing over to him, and he would be talking about a little bit about his self as much as he would want to. There are reasons why he has got an icon and not his face, and you can't see him, and he would probably be explaining it to us if he so wants. Infi, welcome to Heartland Bengali. It's great to have you here.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me, and Jai Shri Ram to all your listeners.
Jai Shri Ram.
Yeah.
So tell us about the icon. Tell us about yourself as much as you can say. And for obvious reasons, we are not. I'm not taking your name, so I'll
Yeah.
call you as Infi. I'll address you as Infi. So it's all yours. You can, you know, take over.
Yeah. So the reason I hide behind the mask, I mean, everybody is seeing what's happening in US right now with all these tech censorship and curtailing public opinion. I mean, last year in Canada, when some people gave made some tweets like just random people who don't even have that much reach. They made some tweets criticizing the government, and their bank accounts were sealed. PayPal, a private company, they just locked their bank accounts, locked their funds. And even in India, there have been people who have been called by their company's HR for Facebook posts. I mean, apolitical Facebook posts. It's nothing, it's just them sharing about yoga or something, and the HR of the company calls them because they're supposedly being extremist religiously. So like, there is no longer a free speech. All the private Silicon Valley techno feudalists, they are controlling all the opinion. So you got to
Yeah.
protect yourself.
No, I smiled, and I probably you also smiled as a result of that. But this is not something which we should smile about. This is not something
No,
which we
yeah,
should,
yeah.
talk lightly about. This is something which we should
Hmm.
take in all seriousness. So you mean to say that one of the reason why your face is behind an icon and why we can't see you is because of the advent of too much of wokeism in India,
Yeah. To Wokeism, and it's like not just wokeism, it's
cancel culture.
cancel culture and how they can affect your real life. Like, you can say something completely normal, or let's say just something remotely critical of some authority, and then one fine day you may find you have lost your job, or your educational institution has suspended you.
Hmm.
So it's not just about them promoting some ideologies that people don't agree to. It's them literally forcing them down your throat. So that's one thing. And in India, it takes probably a more violent form than in America. What we saw happened with that tailor in Jaipur,
Hmm.
who, I guess, he just shared something like a casual joke on some Muslim or something, and then they came and killed him.
Right.
And Nupur Sharma was ousted out by the BJP just for quoting the hadith. I mean, what she said was not even her opinion. She quoted the hadith verbatim, and she was not only was she ousted out by the BJP, like the entire global ummah came down upon her. I
Hmm.
mean, she's still living in danger of her life. She's still, just a few months ago, the government of India gave her a gun license, and people were celebrating, oh, that finally Nupur Sharma has gotten gun, and now she protects herself. And I was like, this is not something you should celebrate about. I mean, in a free country, a woman, for quoting a text, is having to keep guns and bodyguards just so she can move out of the house. This is
Hmm.
not something you should be proud about. It's like, I personally, I even said on Facebook that what happened with Nupur Sharma is perhaps one of the most shameful moments in the history of independent India. Like, this should have never happened, and in an apparently Hindu country.
Hmm.
So yeah, so this is also a problem. Like,
Okay.
you may, I mean, someone may get violent on you.
Right. Okay, okay. So there are a couple of things which comes to my mind based on what you said, but I guess I'll keep it a little aside for the time now, as far as an Indian context is concerned. But you
Yeah.
did talk a little bit about Silicon Valley, and you did talk a little bit about how these people. I mean, you did not talk a little bit about how these people. A question that I'm about to ask you. You did
Yeah.
mention Silicon Valley, and
Hmm.
the moment I think about a social media platform like this, the Facebooks and the what and the, what else is there, Twitters of
Hmm.
this world,
Yeah. Yeah.
and somebody hiding behind an icon, or somebody preferring not to come out in the open and prefers to remain behind an icon, it talks a little bit about the techno feudalism that probably should be of some interest to you.
Yeah, it's very much interest because yeah,
Okay.
actually this goes back to how Silicon Valley was formed.
Okay.
You know, most people tend to think that Silicon Valley was the result of great uh, entrepreneurial power of, let's say, the venture capitalist and investment bankers of America,
Mm-hmm.
which is not true. If you look at all the big companies, Google, Facebook, Tesla, Twitter, most of them, these technologies were essentially given grants by the Pentagon. Most of them, the initial funding that Google got was from Pentagon. Same goes for Twitter and Facebook. And after that, it was US State Department, it was CIA, it was NASA. So essentially, Silicon Valley is a project of what we call the US establishment. It has nothing to do with Republican, Democrat, right or left. It is the project of the US establishment. They created all these technologies for themselves. Even internet, in fact, is a creation of the US Department of Defense during World War. So so when you see these apps clamping down on certain voices, especially critical of the US establishment, like pertaining to NATO's expansion towards east or the presence of biolabs across the globe, so they will use these platforms to clamp down upon them because essentially these platforms belong to them. In I mean, last year, Elon Musk released those Twitter files, which showed that FBI and CIA had sort of penetrated Twitter and censored views on the vaccine and Pfizer and all that. But most of us, we knew it like years back that essentially Facebook is completely penetrated by FBI. Like most of the top level executives of Facebook are ex FBI or ex CIA or ex NATO. In fact, recently that saga happened with Amit Malviya, when the print accused Amit Malviya being in cahoots with the US State Department to censor anti-Hindu voices in India.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy from Meta who targeted that, he was a chief campaigner of the Democrats before the 2020 election, and even before that he was ex FBI. So it's not that Silicon Valley is doing something alien to what the American establishment wants. It essentially is just one of the parts of American imperialism. So this is what techno feudalism is all about. And the right and left, they both get it wrong. In fact, the left wants all these censorship. They are the ones who propagate all these progressive values and wokeness and cancel out traditional voices or conservative voices.
Mm-hmm.
And the right opposes this, but they don't get to the depth of it. I mean, I see Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, like people, they speak against Facebook, Google, BlackRock, Vanguard, but at the same time they ask for more free market reforms. So this is completely ironical. Like, you want to stop the corporations and you are asking for more free market reforms. Essentially, you are opposing the corporations, but empowering the very economic system that empowers those corporations.
Mm-hmm.
So it's completely messed up. Or if I put it in simply, like, it's completely messed up. No one knows how to stop all these things.
Okay, so let's talk about techno feudalism, and when the moment we steer towards something like something which is like a term, something which is a term like techno feudalism, then a section of people would immediately start talking about conspiracy theories. Now, this here, for my viewers, for our viewers, conspiracy theory is something which is technically called, known as, I mean, if you were to define conspiracy theory, it is called, you know clandestine government plots.
Yeah.
plots and programs which the government doesn't want you to know about. They are incredibly
Hmm.
difficult to prove because the government doesn't leave any mark. The government doesn't leave any trace. And the moment we talk about something which is as fascinating as conspiracy theories, you immediately get two sets of people. One set of people is immediately going to denounce you, saying that you're
Yeah.
a fearmonger, you're a fear peddler, you are a conspiracy theorist. And there is a
Yeah, I've been
section of
called blackpilled in Twitter.
okay, and you've got a section of very small section of people who would probably sit back and be willing to give it a shot, be willing to hear you out. Some very
Yeah.
famous conspiracy theories hover around the MH370, the downing of the Malaysian aircraft.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then you have the death of John F. Kennedy. And
Yep.
one such conspiracy theory, so-called conspiracy theory, which me and Infi are talking right now, which Infi touched upon right now, is the fact of techno feudalism and new world order. So
Yeah.
Infi, why don't you expand on that?
Yeah, I will say something regarding techno feudalism.
Yes,
You
please.
said that conspiracy theories are difficult to prove. That's true when you are talking about clandestine military operations and foreign governments penetrating other foreign governments. Now those are difficult to prove.
Hmm.
Even if you have causal links, it's kind of difficult to make an official case of it. However, the ones who look deeply, for them it's clear. But when you talk about Silicon Valley and techno feudalism, the evidences are there in broad daylight. Like it's not a conspiracy theory. You just need to Google the history of Google itself, and you will see the first funding they got was from US Department of Defense.
Hmm.
Even today, Google gets the lowest interest rate loans from the US Federal Reserve. In the
Okay.
2008 economic crisis, when all the investment banks were like, they just messed up the entire real estate sector, FBI and CIA, they themselves came in defense of them and forced the US government to give them loans, low interest rate loans. So techno feudalism is not difficult to prove. There have been multiple books written on that subject, multiple articles where uh, like the funding links are pretty clear. In fact, one famous book that I always recommend to my readers in Facebook is Mariana Mazzucato's Entrepreneurial State. In it, she has explained in detail how Silicon Valley and Wall Street came into being, and most of their foundational fundings goes back to grants from the Pentagon, from the US State Department, or the US Department of Defense, and they still maintain a lot of control over them.
Hmm.
So this is my, like, this is not a conspiracy theory. It's very much clear to those who want to see it, and those who don't want to see it, I mean, no one can do anything about them. But about clandestine governments, yeah, that is one thing which is difficult to prove. But yeah, techno feudalism is not difficult to prove. The evidences are there. In fact, when Twitter files was released by Elon Musk last year, I mean,
Hmm.
it should be now clear to everyone that what Silicon Valley is essentially. It's just an extension of US intelligence.
Right. Okay, so there are three things that I'm reminded of here. I'll briefly talk about one by one. The
Yeah.
one thing that I'm reminded of right now is a very old lecture by George Friedman, the
Mhm.
defense and the political analyst, the famous defense and the guru of this chap, Robert Kaplan, where he said that
Okay.
every piece of, and it was quite a candid talk which YouTube has. He said every piece of equipment that you hold today is a product of defense. Every piece of
Yes.
equipment that is made available to the public, from the cell phone to the
Yes.
internet to the
Correct.
telephone to the telegraph to everything, was
Can I can
first.
I can I
Yeah,
add something here?
yeah,
Uh,
please.
you said about cell phone. Yeah, in fact, cell phone itself was a project of KGB.
Hmm.
KGB was the one who first developed the cell phone. So yeah, he's right. Like most of the, in fact, in terms of technology, most of what you use is product of the defense.
Yeah.
Internet itself is product of US Department of Defense.
Internet, digital camera, satellite
Yeah, yeah.
television,
Hmm.
everything has been.
Everything.
The base of everything is war. These were developed because somebody was fighting
Yep.
someone and there was a need, and then later on these products were made available, the patents were made free,
Yeah.
and so
Hmm.
he says that you guys talk a lot about how big an entrepreneur, what's that guy's name, Apple Steve Jobs is, or how
Steve
great
Jobs.
an entrepreneur Bill Gates is. They did nothing much, but these products were already available, made available by the United States government. They discontinued with the patent. They just
Yeah.
happened to be there.
Yes.
So that's one thought which I had. The
Hmm.
other thought which I had is, you said techno feudalism is not a conspiracy theory, it is there. And yes, and that reminds me, that
Yeah.
reminded me of the book that we had shared between us, Walking by Vivek Ramaswamy. Perhaps you can talk a
Yeah.
little bit
Vivek
about that.
Ramaswamy. Yep.
Incidentally, he has announced his
Yeah.
candidature for United States election 2024. Are you aware of
Yeah.
that?
That I feel he made a mistake.
Okay, so we can talk about, okay, and the
Yeah.
third thing which I am wanted to make here is that yes, tech feudalism is something which is there, but tech feudalism aiming to take over the world is something which a lot
Hmm.
of people say is conspiracy theory.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
do you have any observations on that that you would want to share with
yeah.
us?
Yeah. 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 I have. Yeah. The thing with this, the one world government and new world order is that in even this is not something that random Twitter users or Facebook users came out on their own. When the Soviet Union collapsed, it was I think it was George Bush or some CIA director who came in public and talked about the new world order. It, like, they themselves mentioned it. And just before the lockdown, the WEF conference that happened in Davos,
Hmm.
it was Klaus Schwab and George Soros who together released the concept of one world government. Like, they literally said it, we want one world government. And in fact, when you look at George Soros, his ideology of open society is it's effectively that, like, we have open borders and national borders, nothing, and everything will be controlled by some master authority, 15 unique
Hmm.
cities and all that thing. These are not that people came out on their own. It's like the authorities themselves have released that. They themselves have said that. And the right is just saying that these things are wrong, and the left is in denial of it, because obviously left is the effective foot soldiers of the authorities. So I don't know how people don't see these things, how they term all these things conspiracy theories when.
Okay, so I'll ask you to stop here, because you are talking about something which a lot of our audience would not clearly understand. There are a
Yeah.
few
Okay.
things which you need to break down now. When you say that
Okay.
the lefts are the foot soldiers of the authorities, that is something which you need to describe. When you talk
Okay.
about somebody like George Soros and his complete disregard for the about the idea of nation states, and his wanting to
Yeah.
break
Yeah.
away all the the political boundaries and create a one
Mm.
world. uh, so you please, can you explain that to viewers, or
Yeah. Okay.
in English, Hindi, in whichever way it's possible, make it as simple as possible for them to understand, because I want a lot of people to know what is going on, and especially in India, we would want a
Yeah.
lot
Yeah.
of people to. तो इसको थोड़ा आप समझाओ.
Yeah. But, actually, the collapse of the Soviet Union
Hmm.
was the end of the genuine left. The left that came out to oppose colonialism,
Hmm.
oppose power grab. The collapse of the Soviet Union was the end of it. And the 2008 uprisings that happened, Occupy Wall Street, was perhaps the last of the classical left movements.
Classic left movement, yeah.
Yeah, the left after that completely died out. Now, why this happened was, you have to go back to the 1980s. In the 1970s, when US economy was facing stagnation, what they called as stagflation, which I feel it was, I and many from the even American right will agree to this, was completely sort of unnecessary panic by the authorities, because 1970s US was the pinnacle of human achievement. They had everything.
Hmm.
They had no reason to panic for more GDP growth. It was just impossible for them to grow anymore. But essentially, there was panic amongst the authorities, especially Wall Street. And so their guy, Ronald Reagan, he came to power. And what he did was deregulation of all the markets. And that resulted in all the industrial jobs moving to China, Vietnam, and Mexico. And US lost all those simple jobs. So what happened is, matlab, धीरे धीरे you started having all these unemployed graduates
Hmm.
who had degrees but they didn't have jobs because there are no longer any jobs. So then you had a lot of student uprisings and things like that in the United States. It was then that the FBI, and essentially it was the FBI who penetrated all these student movements and people asking for economic reforms and jobs, and these were all left-wing uprisings, by the way, because they were challenging the authorities.
Mm-hmm.
So the FBI penetrated them and they appropriated it.
Mm-hmm.
So when you see the current left opposing the current left being foot soldiers for the authorities,
Mm.
they do so because that's what they've been trained in university classrooms. You look at the major universities like Harvard, MIT, or University of Chicago. Even they are run by grants from Ford Foundation, from Rockefeller Foundation, from Asia Foundation, or Pentagon, or US Department of Defense.
Mm.
So these students, these left-wing, so-called left-wing progressives, who are by definition challenging the authorities, but essentially what they are doing is they are propagating the ideology of the elites itself, because that's what they've been trained in university classrooms. Because uh, the left, the classical left, the genuine left, no longer exists. What you have is just foot soldiers for the authorities. So, if I have to give one example, Mark Zuckerberg constantly keeps saying that how uh, having a family is antithetical to profit. Like if you have a family, you don't focus on your work, you want to have picnics, you want to have fun time, and so it's like it's an ill effect for capitalism. Like people,
Yeah.
corporations don't make profits. And then you see the left wing students, they say the same thing, like, abolish the family, family is patriarchy, everybody should be free. So it's like they are propagating the ideology of the elite in the veil of opposing the elite, but they are not opposing it, they are propagating it. And this has also got to do with monopolistic power, because now when you see the US Treasury just last year announced that if a company has 50% blacks, they can get loans in 1% less. So, for corporations like Google, it's not a big deal for them to maintain 50% blacks, because they can do that. They
Yeah.
can flush out money for to get low interest rate loans. But if a new entrepreneur is building his own company, he will have a challenge meeting this quota. But if it doesn't meet that quota, he will have to pay more interests. So he's already behind Google in terms of competition and funding power. Now he's more behind Google because of these quotas and all. So, like,
So in
all
effect,
these
you
ideologies
killing
are
the
essentially
competition.
empowering the elites.
I'm saying, so in effect you're killing the competition also at one point,
Yeah,
at,
yeah.
at one way.
Yeah. It's completely like a monopolistic ideology, which Vivek Ramaswamy, by the way, has put really well in his book. So, when you see this in numbers, it's essentially just 1% or 0.5% in loans. But this 1% becomes huge when you are talking about scales. Like 1% of $10 billion is a lot. So, and for a new company, it's going to be difficult to match up to it. So all these left-wing ideologies that you see, progressivism and LGBTQ and environmental, all these garbage, they are essentially propagated by the very authorities who they claim to oppose, but they are not opposing it. So this is what I mean when I say that left are the stupid foot soldiers for the elites. Most of them are stupid, and the controllers of those stupid foot soldiers, they are complicit.
So the last classical left movement was 2008 Occupy Wall Street
Occupy Wall
movement,
Street. Yeah.
and then somehow this, this progressive leftism or cultural Marxism or whatever you want to call it, or
Hmm.
wokeism, took over. And
Yeah.
nowadays what we are seeing, what's coming across in front of us labeled as left, is basically a set of people who are doing the bidding of the feudal authorities,
Yeah.
which is essentially Wall Street and Silicon
Silicon
Valley
Valley.
and the
Yeah.
governments and the okay, and
Yeah. Yeah.
they under the garb of fighting those people, they are basically defending these people and they are
Yeah.
propagating their agenda,
Yeah.
whatever that is. Okay,
Yeah.
now there is another interesting thing which
I would like to add something here.
yeah, bolo.
Uh, yeah. When you talk about the Occupy Wall Street,
Hmm.
there's a very good article by, I'm forgetting the name of the guy, but it's great. I have a blog on that too. Uh, he showed that before the Occupy Wall Street protests,
Hmm.
the number of articles in US mainstream media regarding racism, or white privilege, white supremacy, all these identity terms were very less. But just after Occupy Wall Street, these words, they shot up like by 2000%. 3000%. Suddenly you are getting articles where the white guy is blamed. This is which is white supremacy. This is capitalism and all these things. So essentially, what they did was in 2008, U.S. Treasury, Wall Street, and the government, they all messed up big time.
Yeah.
They crashed the entire real estate sector of US, which led to a global recession. So they messed up big time, but they were not willing to take the responsibility of it. So what they did is they funded media houses, and they blamed it on white supremacism. Like, you lost, like telling the average American chap on the street, like, you lost your house not because Goldman Sachs made a terrible decision, but because of white supremacy of your neighbor. It doesn't make sense, but that's what they did. Like
And people
they
actually landed up in believing them.
yeah, people actually end up in believing them, because when people are frustrated, you just want something,
You
a
want an
scapegoat.
enemy. Yeah.
Yeah, you just want a scapegoat. So this is how it happened. I mean, it was not an organic transformation. They literally funded the media houses to propagate this ideology, and it was like it's like a very clear difference. As I said, 2000% increase in racist articles in media, 3000% increase in the words white supremacy in media channels. So these are not organic. It was specifically done.
Hmm. And that is right about the time when this Occupy Wall Street ka physical movement also got hijacked by
Yeah,
the
yeah.
woke guys, because there was this incident which Vivek Ramaswamy says, where there was this public forum where people were being invited to talk, and these people came in and said, we are more oppressed than you, so we should talk first.
Hmm.
Why are
Yes,
you
yes,
more oppressed? Because we are black. Why are you more
yes,
oppressed? Because we are homosexuals.
yes,
And
yes.
they graduate. It's such an extremely smart
Hmm.
thing. Then the question back to you, and this I'm asking because a lot of Indians have started listening to Jordan Peterson and all, and a couple of friends who I know. I mean, it's not
Hmm.
somebody who is your age group who's taking an interest in Jordan Peterson, and I would still say if you listen to Purana videos of Jordan Peterson, they
Hmm.
pack a
He's still,
punch.
yeah, yeah. He's
Yeah,
still.
but I'm not, right now seeing people of my age group are suddenly discovering Jordan Peterson, and I'm trying to tell them कि भाई पुराना video देख, नया video मत देख, नया video में ये कर. Okay, so the thing is, why I'm discussing is, I mean, this bit about Jordan Peterson becomes important because I have been a fan of that person at one point in time
Yeah,
a
yeah,
few years ago, and I believe
yeah.
even you liked him a lot.
Yep.
So the thing is that now these guys, a John Peterson or a Ben Shapiro, what are they then fighting against? And do they not realize it, or do they realize it but they're too deep in their own narrative and they can't come out of it?
Yeah,
What you
I
think?
mean, yeah, that's what I said in the beginning, that the American right, they oppose these ideologies of wokeness, but they empower the very economic system that empower the corporations who are funding these ideologies. So in fact, I was shocked to see Vivek Ramaswamy do this a few days ago. He was speaking against how BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street, the three companies who control most of global assets, like
Hmm.
global assets, not just American assets. So he was talking about how these corporations are destroying American business and destroying American entrepreneurship and destroying conservative values, traditional values, and all that. And he was bang on about it. But then he went on to saying that to stop them, we need more market reforms. So this is completely ironical. Like, how are you going to stop the corporations by empowering market, which is like the playground of those corporations?
You know, that
So
reminds. Acha, bolo. Finish,
I
finish
mean,
first.
yeah. So yeah. So so yeah.
So
Jordan
that's another
Peterson.
example.
Yeah, Jordan Peterson does that, and Ben Shapiro as well. In fact, Jordan Peterson just few months ago, he made a video of against Deloitte, the major consultancy firm, and their crusade against all this climate change hysteria.
Hmm.
So in it he was saying that what Deloitte is doing is wrong and all that, and so on and so forth. And but then in the very next video, he is asking for the US government to give more tax cuts to corporations to empower entrepreneurship. I mean, it's completely contradictory. One day you were saying that Deloitte and McKinsey and all these consultancy firms are doing all these bad things in America, and the very next day you were saying that give them tax cuts, give them more freedom, give them more market reforms. So, I mean, it's completely ironical. What the American right does not realize is that what happened since Reagan's deregulation in the 80s is that the power of the democracy, American democracy, started collapsing and power of American corporations started rising. So what has happened in America is essentially that there is no public sector, there is no government. In fact, there is a very good economist who, by the name Wendy Brown, she puts it really well that the demos has been undone in America. There is no demos, there is no public power, because all you have are these corporations. And when you look at US bureaucracy, all the people, the most of the people working in US bureaucracy have been employees of Wall Street banks or employees of Silicon Valley. And after leaving their jobs in bureaucracy, they go back to Silicon Valley, they go back to Wall Street. So while they are in bureaucracy, they will obviously have to do the bidding of their friends in Wall Street, otherwise they don't get back. So yeah, so I don't know if Jordan Peterson, Ben Shapiro, they realize the contradictions in their sort of their ideas or not. But yeah, the American right is completely ineffective in front of all these, this the beast known as wokeness, because they actually don't realize what's happening.
Okay. Interesting thing about Vivek Ramaswamy is, do you know? Yes, he does talk about Vanguard and BlackRock, the largest asset management companies of the world, and
Yeah.
incidentally, he has opened an asset management company of his own to
Yep.
counter them. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah, so that's funny. Yes, but
and
that's
and he has worked with George Soros as well.
oh, brilliant. So yeah, actually that didn't sort of strike me कि ठीक है यार हो सकता है कि you think Vanguard is bad and you think BlackRock is bad, and so you have opened
Yeah.
a asset management company which you want to run ethically, but then his decision to join the Republican forces to fight for presidency 2024, that sort of came as a
Hmm.
shock, and you said he made a mistake. Would you want to elaborate on that? What?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he made a mistake in that sense that he shouldn't have entered politics, as you rightly said, because for one, he's not winning. Like, come on, he's not winning, we all know that. But what he did with doing all this is that he sort of lowered his credibility, because the day he announced his presidency, the many people who were following him on the American right, they started pointing out all those things that you said, that you opened your own asset management company, you worked with George Soros, and so on and so forth. So he essentially ruined his image, and sort of proved the old adage that everybody essentially wants to enter politics. Like, everybody who's speaking on public issues wants to enter politics. So that's that.
And that reminds me of that old Yuri Bezmenov video I keep going back to every now and then. I'm sure
Yeah,
my
yeah.
viewers are also must be bored of it by now. But there was a very interesting point which he said, where he said that, with all these corporations that are sort of governing us, media and corporations that are governing us, are basically a bunch of unelected people.
Mhm.
And where
Yep,
is the democracy if you've handed over the decision making process
exactly.
to a bunch of unelected people? Who has elected them? Where do they get the power from? Which is
Exactly.
precisely what you are talking
Exactly.
about when you talk about the
Hmm.
feudalism of Wall Street and Silicon Valley clubbing with the United States political population, and then taking the country for a ride.
Hmm.
Okay, we'll put aside John Peterson and Shapiro and Vivek Ramaswamy and travel a little bit towards Indian subcontinent. And here is this thing for my
Hmm.
viewers about Infi, is that Infi is critical of the left as well as of the right. So, I mean, he takes no prisoner. And that is what we want this Adda session also to be, be absolutely unabashed. And then let's talk about things which you want to talk about. So, Infi, your take on the khichdi that is Indian right and Indian left, and where do we stand? Do we at all have a fiscal right and a fiscal left distinction in India? And आज के दिन में इतना जो ये right wing, ये left wing, ये वो जो चलता है, how much of it is actually has some substance?
Hmm.
Over to you.
Yeah, so I'll tell about something about the left and the right. There's actually a lot of misunderstanding of what Indian left and what Indian right is.
Mm-hmm.
Indian left was never the kind of left what you see in Soviet Union, or what you see in Cuba or Vietnam or China like places. They were
Mm-hmm.
essentially extended arms of the British Crown. So, if, in fact, Vikram Sampath has explained this really well in his book. He has literally, dug out letters from people like M. N. Roy and the leaders of the Communist Party writing letters to the British Empire. So, the left in India is essentially a mix of evangelism, colonialism, and Islamists. This is
Hmm.
what the left is.
Hmm.
So they and there is a misunderstanding sort of with the Indian voter base that the left is controlled by Beijing or used to be controlled by USSR, which is not true, because the leaders of the Communist Party or the leaders of Congress or the entire left cabal, they are not invited to Beijing for conferences, they are not invited to Shanghai for conferences, they are invited to London, they're invited to Cambridge, they're invited to Harvard, they go to West. So the left in India was essentially an extension of colonialism. It was basically imperialism repackaged. So that is what the left is, was, and the left is. And when you look at the BJP, they are not sort of dominated by the West. They are not controlled. They're not like explicitly controlled by the American deep state, but they believe in the ideology of the American deep state. uh, um, you see this mostly in when they, like, the first time when Narendra Modi came to power, he held the vibrant Gujarat summit, and the chief guest was US Secretary of State John Kerry.
Scary, yeah.
So yeah, and
The
even
the
before
Republic
the,
Day after that, where he
yeah,
called in Barack Obama.
yeah, he called in Barack Obama, and then he was like hand in hand friends with Donald Trump.
Donald Trump, yeah.
So the, yeah, yeah, and one of the most, like, sort of the most, I would say, this was illegal in part of the BJP. The most illegal thing they did, which no one paid attention to, was bring those two amendments in the FCRA Act of 2010. One amendment they brought in 2016 and one in 2010. What the amendment was basically that earlier earlier Indian political parties were not allowed to take donations from foreign corporations, but now they can take donations from foreign corporations. This amendment was not brought in by the Congress, not by the left. This was brought in by the BJP. And then the next amendment was that the political parties don't have to disclose the funds. Like any funds they have gotten from foreign from 1976, they don't have to disclose it. So I mean, if this does not prove that BJP is is like intertwined with globally vested special interest groups, I don't know what does.
Okay.
And
Ah,
even,
bolo.
no, yeah, there is one more point about
Please, please, please.
yeah, what essentially has happened very quietly under the BJP regime is the proliferation of LGBTQ and all the homosexual ideology in India. Like in December 2021, the first time there was a queer parade in Himachal. Like this would have been impossible a few years ago in India. A queer parade in Himachal. It was controlled some organization or Himachal Queer Pride or something. The name what is, and they were brought in by the local BJP authorities to give lectures in hospitals, in schools, and now they are printing textbooks. And the same thing is happening happening in various other places. Like I'm seeing it happen in Bangalore, in Karnataka, in places like Delhi, Mumbai, in all these places happening. And what's also very interesting happened last year was um, a US envoy came to India at the end of August to talk about homosexual rights. And they were in New Delhi for, I think, over a week. And just few days later, the Karnataka state government announces reservation for homosexuals in the police force. So, I mean, the causal links are there.
Hmm. We
Yes.
seem, Infi, we lost you for a couple of seconds. Can you hear us? Can you hear
Okay.
me?
So,
I think there's some issue with the
yeah,
connection.
yeah, I
You
can
can,
hear.
you can hear me. I think probably you can hear me, but I cannot hear you. There's some issue with the
Hello.
connection. I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay,
I didn't
so
lose you. I always had you.
okay, but the thing is that your voice was cracking and it was going absolute silent for some in intervals. All right, so we are. Um, where were we? We were talking about an US envoy comes in and he or she talks about LGBT rights and takes a kind of a what? How shall I put it? An orientation session,
Hmm.
and then you see all states cascading talking about LGBT rights and then including them in their school syllabus and things like that.
Yes.
Okay, so continue, please.
Not just school syllabus, they gave reservations in government offices. Like, yeah, they like now they have brought in like literal quotas for transgenders in Karnataka police. I
Hmm.
think they announced 79 positions for specifically for transgenders in Karnataka police.
Hmm.
So, I mean, it's not just about them pushing this ideology, they are like literally bringing in policy changes. And they are targeting sensitive areas. Like, if you weaken a country's police, if you weaken a country's army, I mean, you are just exposing it for like external threats or even internal threats for that matter.
Hmm.
So,
And
yeah.
there is another angle which I would want to explore. See, on the face of it, a lot of people would sort of feel a little, quizzical about the fact that what is the problem in being inclusive and all. And this is where I would want you to make your point that inclusion of LGBT is not the problem. The problem is somewhere else. How does it impact
Hmm.
us in the long run? Can you care to throw some light? For example, including
Yes.
gender change surgery in Ayushman Bharat. And what is the larger idea? Why is USA pushing this? If you can elaborate on that.
Yes. So, yeah, the reason it is problematic is because, let's say there is a riot happening in your area and you call the police to control that area. You don't care if the police is male, female, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer. You don't care about it. You want someone competent to stop the riots. But what now essentially is happening is that they are pushing for identity politics, which is clamping down on merit. Like, you will get the job just because you are a transgender
Of a
or you
particular
are a lower
orientation. Yeah.
caste. You will not get the job because you are better or because you are of a particular orientation, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, people should get job based on their competence, based on their merit. So yeah, this is problematic because essentially what you are doing is you are sort of empowering incompetence. And when society is run by incompetent people, it doesn't take much time for society to collapse.
Hmm.
And the other thing you talked about, gender transitioning is not only ethically wrong thing to do, it's also scientifically doesn't make sense. Like, a man changing a gender to a female does not make him a female. What it essentially does, it he just gets rid of his genitals. He does not become a woman. He can never get pregnant. He can not do all the things that a woman can do, but it's just basically, sort of what the WEF has been saying, about depopulation, that we need to cut the population of the earth so that it's easier to control the people. That's what it does. It attacks traditional value system, traditional family structures, and this is why it's problem. And it's problem also because this has not yet happened in India, but it's happening in US. Is that they are saying that kids who are 5 years old, 6 years old, 8 years old, they can go and do gender transitioning, and the parents cannot stop
Hmm.
them. If the parents try to stop them, the parents will be arrested. So this is like mass level brainwashing. You are pushing for these transgenderism and gender transitioning ideologies in school textbooks. You are brainwashing the kids, and those kids now are going to get their genitals ripped. And if the parents are guiding them, you are arresting the parents. So it's a completely inhuman ideology. And one silver lining in all this is that many people are now coming to regret it. I mean, I have seen videos in Twitter where, just I saw recently a few days ago, where a 17-year-old girl who had been in gender transitioning medications for 2 years to become a boy, and now she's regretting it because she's in excruciating pain. Her voice has become completely messed up. She can now no longer get to be a mother. She looks ugly. She is losing her physical strength. She is suffering from all these kinds of diseases. So she was just coming out and telling everybody that, don't do all these things. These are wrong, and don't fall into this trap. So there is one silver lining. Hopefully people will realize this, but so far the authorities have the final say.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's, practically speaking, keeping all the, all the emotional and the sentimental aspect and the feel good or the feel bad aspect aside, practically
Hmm.
speaking, what it looks like is that this is a, probably a part, probably a component of the idea of depopulation.
Yes, this is part of the depopulation agenda because, as I said, Klaus Schwab and the entire WEF Davos
WEF.
Nexus,
Mm.
yeah, they have been talking about all these, depopulation thing at a time when TFR globally is collapsing. South Korea has just recorded the
Yes.
worst TFR in the history of humanity, 0.78.
Yeah.
And even in India, just a few years ago, the total TFR of India collapsed below replacement level, and I'm pretty sure Hindu TFR will be even less. So, uh, this is part of WEF's. This is also why WEF opened its arms for Sadhguru. Most people tend to think that WEF invited Sadhguru because they're impressed by yoga and all those things. No, actually, Sadhguru falls into the same line of depopulation as WEF, and so they invited Isha Foundation to come and speak on them. But essentially, what depopulation is, it's just these globalist oligarchs wanting to control the whole world. So this is what it is.
All right. Okay. Hey, Infi, it was great talking to you. We are already closing on our time, which is like we've passed 45 minutes.
Yeah, yeah,
So we'll
yeah.
have we'll have to keep it there. And
Yes.
incredibly interesting discussions. I wouldn't say we've opened a can of worms, but probably we have
Yeah,
opened
yeah.
a much bigger container and full of things which we don't even want to look
Yes.
right now. तो एक काम करते हैं, we'll continue on this. I made a couple of
Hmm.
notes so that it helps us during our next meeting. We can
Hmm.
take from there whenever we are catching up next, and we'll continue on this Adda. Right?
Okay, okay. Yeah,
All right. Thanks for joining me. Thanks for joining us.
yeah.
Viewers,
Thank you for
please,
having me.
you're welcome. And viewers, please like and subscribe, and subscribe to Infi's Substack blogs, and you can also find him on Facebook, and you can, follow Infi, and you can go through his posts. Posts are incredibly cerebral; they make you think a lot. And I would continue with our Adda sessions whenever I get him next. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.